Pokémon Gold and Silver on the Game Boy Color. We all hoped for a remake and we actually got one. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are the latest additions to the Pokémon line ahead of Generation 5, which we'll probably get next spring. If you've been following me for the past couple of years, you probably know that I made a retrospective review of the Metals generation on the Game Boy Color. My account lists it as the first review I did, but that's not the case. I already remade my first one, which was a really awfully dumb version of my Final Fantasy II retrospective made in June of 2008. In the spirit of the remake, though, I've adapted this review from the original. I won't be covering too much of what Gold and Silver brought to the franchise in this video because I already covered that over in the Metals generation retrospective. I'm here to talk about what they've done to bring this brilliant generation up to speed with the young'uns today. Right then, shall we dance?
Everybody wants to make a statement. Everybody needs to carve their mark. To stand alone in the victory circle. Stick the claim when the music starts. Give it all you got. You can be the very best ever. Take your best shot, and what you learn will come together. It's a whole new world we live in.
When this century began, everyone knew their dojo from their Gengar. Schools banned merchandise through fear of their students stabbing each other over shiny Kabutops card. Playgrounds were meshed with link cables as people engaged in a blood sport during their lunch hour. If you didn't have a Game Boy, you sucked. In the year 2000, Pokémon was king. In 2009, Nintendo were afraid that kids today have forgotten this, and were determined to send us back in time. Back then we had the Game Boy Color, now we've moved on quite a bit and the DS has usurped the Game Boy family position at the top of the handheld game market. The Nintendo that once claimed the DS was just a side offering to the Game Boy series is now the de facto, and you aren't playing the original Gold Silver on these babies officially. Having remade the first generation games for the Game Boy Advance during the third generation, gamers around the world were foaming at the lips, waiting to see if they could announce a new Johto quest. How have 10 years been to Johto? The first thing you'll notice is that because of the new console being used, the graphics of the game have been significantly increased. We've gone from the smaller display and 8-bit graphics of the Game Boy Color to the huge colour palette and 3D model rendering capabilities found on the DS. However, the gameplay remains top-down RPG stuff. The same perspectives that you originally played at, you're still limited to walking in 4 directions like it's an NES game. The familiar sights will all look the same to you with just some improvements or additions made. Graphically, I can't complain. They could have done it in full 3D, but honestly I hate to play 3D games on the DS because the D-pad hurts when you play for longer than an hour or so. I'm serious, you ever try and play Mario 64 DS? Ouch! Menu navigation benefits from the new hardware too. Streamlined even from Diamond, Pearl and Platinum, you can access all the features that you would want from the touchscreen. You can navigate through conversations, select battle options, go through your bag and use items, save the game, check the fight statistics, check your progress and fiddle with game options, all from the buttons and knobs on the touchscreen. You can even turn your running shoes on and off with an automatic switch located here. The stylus makes navigating the menus much quicker, and it can only be an advantage. Most things can still be done with the D-pad for you purists though. The player character from the original game has been updated for a more modern audience with slight alterations to his clothing. Joining him is Katone, or Lyra, who's new to the remakes. She replaces the former female protagonist that was introduced in Pokémon Crystal as a lead female, and she's one of the more friendly rivals in the series, a concept that Generation 3 seemed to push in. Her character is used to introduce you to certain aspects of the game, be it catching Pokemon or just information around town the first time you arrive. If you choose to play as a girl, then the male avatar takes her lines from the script so you won't miss out on anything. The gameplay is pretty much how you'd expect. You fight wild Pokemon until they're weak enough to capture by stuffing them into a ball that's disturbingly smaller than it. After completing this arduous task, you send it into battle against wild Pokemon or other trainers that are just so aggressive! They'll attack you on sight and take turns exchanging blows. There are some updates to the battle screen, the most notable being the addition of animations as characters enter combat from the front and back, as was seen in Platinum. In the original Gold and Silver, held items were introduced. They ranged from power-ups that improve certain elemental attacks, to berries that automatically healed some health when knocked to critical, or ones that remove status elements upon affliction. The berries were one-time use, though in a link battle you wouldn't lose them upon completing them. Some held items needed to be used for Pokemon to evolve, which would become a trend in later iterations. Now, the held items in Diamond and Pearl and Platinum all carry over into this remake, like the ever-popular choice items, as well as technical machines, meaning that coming from Generation 2, you'll have to get used to a completely different set of moves on CD. Also, unlike the original set of games, all the adaptations that have been made to the Pokemon over the years have been carried through too. Natures, which alter stat caps in 2 areas by reducing or raising them, are here too. Adamant fighters will have higher attack than other members of their species at the cost of a lowered special attack, for example. This offers a little more player input and allows you to have a hasty Snorlax or a modest Skarmory if such perversions take your fancy. Pokemon abilities like Levitate, which protects the likes of Gengar from the earthquakes it feared during the lifetime of the original versions of these games, also makes a return from Hoenn and Sinnoh. The Pokégear is a watch-like piece of equipment awarded to your character by your mother. Initially it only allows you to check the time of the day and the day of the week, just like a regular watch, but as you boost it with add-on cards its usefulness increases. The first card you'll obtain lets you track your current location on a simple map screen. Secondly, you'll obtain the radio card, which allows you to receive radio signals and listen to DJ Mary and Professor Oak's shows. Other channels can later be applied that do things like alter wild encounter rates and check lottery results. There's also some that let you capture Pokemon from Hoenn and such later on. It also has a telephone adapter. This comes into use in the storyline as key characters update you on events, but most of the time you'll need to track down numbers of trainers yourself. These trainers will call for rematches, tell you what they've recently fought, or where there's a certain rare Pokemon swarming. They will also call you to tell you that their Rattata is in the top percentile of all Rattata. It's riveting stuff. If all else fails, you can always call your mommy to save the money for you, so you don't spend it all on Pokédolls or Vileplume spores or whatever you kids do these days. If you see it ringing, all you have to do is tap the part of the screen with the phone ringing and you'll answer it. It probably won't be important, but there are some points where you'll be glad that you did. Gold and Silver birthed the real-time clock, and while it disappeared in Generation 3, it came back for 4. Your surroundings change based on the time of day. When Father Time demands, Johto thrown into the dark of night. Characters will excuse themselves for waking you up when they call you, and certain Pokemon will swap shifts in the tall grass, becoming available until morning rolls in. Other Pokemon require the night to evolve. You will receive items from other characters based on the day that you speak to them, or partake in an event that may close its doors on another day of the week. Pokemon breeding originated in the original versions of these games, and the remakes pick up on the improvements made since and add some of their own. Held items can be used to make it less of a random affair. An Everstone on a female fighter can make it easier to pass down the nature to the egg, and new to Heart Gold and Soul Silver is the use of EV training weights to pass down individual values. This perverse pastime of making your fighters get it on, in full view of every Tom, Dick and Harry that cycle past Route 34, isn't just there for that though. Certain moves can only be obtained on particular creatures via this method. It's also a good way of creating a Pokemon with premier statistics. You best get on your bike, because there's a lot of running around hatching Pokemon to be done.